It's embarrassing to fail. So oftentimes what we do is we hide it from the world. We don't want anyone to know that we're not successful. We don't want anyone to know that we're not happy. We pretend that everything's okay. But then what does that accomplish? Well, in actuality, what it accomplishes is that we suffer in silence. Hello everyone, welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. The reason that I make these videos is to help you to understand that your mental health and physical health working well, so each of them working well together, creates that overall sense of well-being. If you find these kind of videos helpful, please subscribe. When we're physically sick, we go to the doctor. If we have a toothache, we go to the dentist. But when we're emotionally hurt, we suffer in silence. And the reason that we do this is because somehow it's still believed that any problem that somebody has, they should fix it themselves. But yet, and so clarity, years and years and years ago, it used to be thought that a strong man wouldn't have to go to the doctor. Years and years and years ago, it used to be thought that if you're strong, you don't need to go to the dentist. What we've learned today is that there are a lot of medical things that you just need a doctor to solve. There are a lot of dental things that you just need a dentist to solve. And if you are unlucky enough, unfortunate enough, to have one of these things happen, you will not be able to solve it by yourself. But yet, till this day, we do not accept that sometimes the emotional things that are happening in our life, if left untreated, can lead to anxiety, depression, and generally a very negative life happening for you that takes you off the path that you want to be on. I believe it's time that people start to recognize that taking care of your mental health is one of the ways that we take care of ourselves. It's a normal, healthy thing to do that you do not need to be ashamed of. And what's interesting to me is that when you take a look at the number of avenues that we are currently being given to access mental health help, it starts to help us to understand that on a very large scale, the government, employers, medical professionals are all aware that your mental health, so being able to solve problems, being able to relate to other people, being able to manage your distress is important for everything else in your life to work. So what I mean by that is, if I'm going to do well at work, if I'm going to do well in my family, if I'm going to do well in my hobbies, being able to manage solving problems, being able to manage my feelings is absolutely important. And yes, psychologists help us to solve problems. In 1943, Maslow published his hierarchy of needs. And what I want you to pay attention to in this hierarchy of needs is that physiological needs, such as breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep, those are what we call those basic needs. The things at the base of the hierarchy are the things that if they are not met, absolutely nothing else above the hierarchy in the hierarchy can be met, right? Like we will focus on getting food. We will focus on finding shelter before we find time to focus on belonging to a group. For example, if I don't have food, it doesn't matter if I belong to what group I belong to. Okay, so let's be clear about something. Everything on the hierarchy is important. But the lower the things are in the hierarchy, the more important they are in your life. And then as we solve the things that are lower, then we can move up to the next level and deal with the next things that are higher on the hierarchy, right? It's kind of like if you're playing a video game, you need to finish one level before you can level up to the next level. And what happens in a video game if you fail at that level, or if there's problems at that level, you need to go back to the previous level to find the answers to make sure that your higher level can work. The next level up is health, employment, property, family, social stability. So if my physiological needs are met, then I can start working on my health, my employment, right? And what happens if while I'm working on those things, all of a sudden, for whatever reason, I don't have water or shelter, right? Well, then I have to go back down to that level. For each level that you're moving through, this is always the case. The lower levels set the stage for you to be able to move up to the next level. What's important for us to think about is that in the moment of talking to somebody about a very specific problem, it's usually obvious to us how big of a problem it is. So for example, you might go to your doctor and you're talking about your health issues, and they're serious health issues, and of course in that moment the doctor understands your health issues. But the problem is this: if my plan to solve for my health issues is going to take 6, 7, 8, 12 months, a year, 2 years, if it's going to take a long time to solve the problem that I'm trying to solve, that health issue, which is like level 2 of the pyramid, is going to affect every level above it. And sometimes what we're not recognizing when we're interacting with someone and that person is struggling to have a positive action with us, what we're not recognizing, and maybe we're not recognizing it, or maybe we're not keeping it in mind, or maybe we don't even know, is that health issue, of course, disrupts everything above it, because it's going to be in my head, right? And finding a way to solve, even if the physical part of being solved is not there yet, becomes really important. How do I make peace with the medical thing that I'm going through right now and continue to live my life? And that's something that a psychologist could help you to work on. What I'm trying to help people to understand is that we often are so worried about looking like if we have everything together that we don't recognize that if we work on the things that bother us, frustrate us, that we don't know how to do, and find real solutions, we don't have to pretend we're okay, because we will be okay. Oftentimes we're met with this idea of, just get over it, just let it go. It's not a big deal. Why are you stressing about that? These ideas that really do give the impression that the things in my life that are frustrating to me should not be frustrating to me. What I'm trying to help everybody to understand today is that part of the reason that happens to us is because our society does have this idea that says you should be able to solve your own problem. And so therefore, when I'm talking about it, and if I talk about it too many times, I get this attitude back from people. Why, you haven't solved that yet? Why are you stressing about that? You get that attitude from people. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's not actually happening in their life. It's happening in your life. And although I'm not saying that they're trying purposefully to be cold, if I'm not living something and somebody else is living it and I don't understand it, it doesn't mean that what they're living isn't still harsh and negative for them. But in our society, we behave as if I can't click into what you're saying right away, then it's not important. And again, because we do have this other idea that says you should be able to solve it by yourself. Nobody would expect you to solve cancer by yourself. Nobody would even expect you to solve a broken arm by yourself, right? Everybody understands if you break your arm, you go to the hospital. Everybody understands if you break your tooth, you go to the hospital, you go to the dentist. Why do we behave as if I'm hurting internally, emotionally, that I should do it by myself? And I do believe it's because we're just not thinking it through. I also think that the reason that we don't understand that it's not a just get over it situation is because we try to separate physical and psychological. But as we see in Maslow's hierarchy, you can't separate them. If on a very physical level you are struggling, emotionally you will struggle. And at the same time, on an emotional level, if you're struggling, then that's all you're focused on. So regardless of where the struggle is coming from, it will have an emotional impact on how you live your life. And then when we're living those negative emotional situations and it's taking us a long time to solve it, and people don't want to hear us talk about it anymore, so I'm talking about friends now, don't want to hear us talk about it anymore, that pulls that shame back into the story. What's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? How come they can be happy and I don't know how to be happy? And, every person's ability to solve what's happening for them is different. Add to that maybe there is a possibility that if you spoke to a psychologist and had very directed assistance with the problem, you would likely solve it faster than trying to figure it out on your own. Because the other thing we need to understand is that when we are living the problem, it's really hard to have perspective on the problem. Versus if I'm not living the problem and you're telling me what's happening, it's much easier for me to have perspective and take all the history into consideration for this moment. And I know it sounds weird that I live my history, but I'm not taking it into consideration when I'm talking about the problem. But part of the reason that most people don't do that is because we still have that idea of get over it. That shouldn't still be bothering you. Versus a psychologist will understand that, that sounds like it's related to this thing that happened to you 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and maybe that's why you're struggling with this. Again, I'm encouraging everybody to understand that seeing a psychologist is normal if you have an issue that you need to work out that you haven't been able to work out on your own in a reasonable amount of time. Every person will decide what's a reasonable amount of time for themselves. But as a general guideline, if you find yourself trying to figure out the same problem either over and over in different relationships or for like consistently on a very regular basis over more than 4 months, chances are you might need some assistance in solving that problem. Those are general guidelines. Psychologists are trained to help people to pull the pieces back together, put that puzzle together and see the picture so that you can solve and move on. The sooner that you solve the problem, the faster you get back to living your life the way that you want to live your life rather than focused on a problem that isn't going away. If you found this kind of video helpful, there's more videos that you can watch from my channel to help you to learn about eating healthy and living your best life. If you want to contribute to production of videos, I have Amazon links, Patreon links, and now Teespring in the description below. I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. I can't wait to talk to you guys again next week.